The screen door banged shut behind me, just in time to catch the tail end of her voice, loud, defensive, the same tone she used when she was caught lying in high school. "He's not a criminal, Mom. He's the only one who believes in me." Noelle stood in the kitchen, with arms crossed, half shielding the man beside her, like a child defending a broken toy. Hector didn't speak. He didn't need to. The dull, black ankle monitor peeking from under his sweatpants said enough. I said nothing. Just walked past them, set the grocery bag down on the counter, and unwrapped a bunch of bananas, like that detail somehow mattered. My hands were too steady. That was the part that scared me. By the time the sun dipped behind the hills, their car was gone. The spare key was missing from the drawer, along with a stack of unopened mail. I sat on the edge of the couch, turned on the table lamp, and opened my banking app. Savings, $0. Euro Retirement Closed Emergency Fund. Unavailable. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed with a voicemail. I didn't need to hear it, but I played it anyway. No hard feelings. "Okay, you'll be fine. You always are." I went into the kitchen and stood where she had been. Same counter, same tile. The bananas were still untouched. My fingertips tapped against the laminate as I calculated. Not numbers losses. 42 years of saving. 3 jobs. 2 layoffs. Noelle's dental surgery. Her freshman year when she couldn't afford books. The car after the accident. She didn't just take money. She took my breath and left me standing with empty hands in a house full of echoes. The hallway creaked. Mateo's bedroom door clicked shut. I hadn't told him yet. I wiped my hands dry, though I hadn't washed them, and went to my desk to pull out the old file folders. It was time to see what I still had. I didn't call the police. It wouldn't change anything. Noelle's name was on the accounts. Legally, she had access. Legally, it wasn't theft. Legally, I had handed her the keys 6 years ago when she was fresh out of her divorce, living off canned soup, saying she just needed a little help getting back on her feet. I opened the folders in neat rows on the dining room table, the same table where I once helped her through college algebra, where we used to trade riddles while balancing checkbooks. Now I sat alone, pencil in hand, breaking down the numbers like it was any other audit. But this one was personal. This one stung. Transaction logs, withdrawal times, location tags, transfers stacked on transfers. The total climbed, fast savings, retirement, emergency reserves, all gone. The number I wrote at the bottom of the page looked foreign, $212,000. I laid the pencil down and pushed back in my chair. The wood floor groaned like it too was tired of this. I sat still for a long time, just staring. Then I reached for my notebook and flipped to a blank page. I listed everything I still owned outright. The house, the car, a handful of bonds in a separate folder. Mateo. That last one made me pause. I heard the door open and the shuffle of sneakers on tile. Mateo's backpack hit the floor in its usual spot, but his footsteps slowed as he entered the dining room. He looked at the papers spread out, then at me. Said nothing. He sat down at the other end of the table, pulled out his homework, and began to work. No questions, no complaints. Just presence. Quiet, steady presence. We stayed like that until the sun dipped low and the numbers on the page blurred. That night, after he went to bed, I rummaged through the junk drawer for a set of brass drawer locks and screwed them into the file cabinets. It wouldn't stop a thief, but it gave my hands something to do. 2 days passed without a word between us about the missing money. I wanted to tell him, but every time I opened my mouth, the words tangled somewhere between my ribs. He moved around the house softly, like he knew not to stir the air too much. Plates were washed, homework was done, lights turned off at the right hour. We lived inside a pause. On the 3rd morning, I woke to the smell of toast and coffee. Mateo was already in the kitchen, plates set, eyes steady. He waited until I sat down before he spoke. I know what she did. The fork slipped from my hand and hit the plate with a small metallic sound. He didn't flinch. I saw him, Hector, taking pictures of your bank mail last week. I thought it was weird. I kept the screenshots from your computer just in case. I stared at him, trying to form a sentence, but my voice stayed small. Mateo. He reached into his backpack, pulled out his tablet, and showed me the screen and email already sent. My former son-in-law's address sat in the corner. I didn't know what you'd want me to do, he said, but I knew I had to do something. Dad works in financial crimes. He'll know what this means. I should have been angry that he'd gone behind my back or worried that he'd involved an adult who didn't owe me anything anymore. But what I felt most was shame. Shame that my grandson had stepped in where his mother should have stood. You're just a kid, I whispered. He looked down at his plate, then back at me. So was I when she stopped seeing me as her son. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument could have been. He reached into his backpack again and handed me a manila folder paper's printed screenshots. A short note written in neat handwriting. Proof. I took it with both hands the way one accepts something sacred. When I opened it, I saw exactly where the next step had to begin. That night, we worked side by side at the dining table. The same table that once held birthday cakes and report cards was now covered in printouts and cables. Mateo moved with quiet purpose, sorting documents into neat piles. I matched his rhythm, scanning each page, saving copies, labeling folders. We didn't speak much. We didn't have to. He had built a timeline meticulous, almost clinical. Transaction logs, wire transfers, even screenshots of messages between Noel and Hector. I read one aloud before I could stop myself. El Paso's cheap and no one asks questions. We'll call it a healing retreat. Cash only. My throat tightened. I didn't want to picture my daughter among strangers lying about wellness while hiding stolen money. But every line of text dragged me deeper into the truth. She knew, Mateo said quietly, about the warrants. I nodded. He didn't need to tell me how he found out. 2 open cases in Texas: fraud and assault. My daughter had chosen to cover for him even after knowing that. We kept working until midnight. When the printer jammed, I pulled the paper free, smoothed the edges, and fed it back in. My hands didn't shake anymore. The ache was still there, sharp, familiar, but it no longer ruled me. By 1 a.m, every document was saved to a secure drive. I slipped it into an envelope and sealed it. Mateo watched as I wrote his father's name on the front. You're sure, he asked. Yes. The next afternoon, I handed it over in the parking lot of the courthouse. There was no drama, no anger, just a transaction between people who once shared a family and now shared a duty. When I got home, the table was clear again. Mateo had put everything away, even the printer cable. He looked up from his homework when I walked in. They'll contact us soon, I said. He nodded, quiet but certain. At 5:47 p.m., my phone rang. I recognized the number before it even lit up the screen. I answered without a word. Noel's voice came through sharp and wild. How could you? He's all I have. You ruined everything, Mom. You just God, you always do this. Always in the way. You think you're better than me? You think I didn't see what you were trying to do with Mateo? I leaned against the kitchen counter, letting her words fall like glass on tile. You're jealous, she hissed. You've always been jealous. You want him to hate me, like you hate everyone who gets more than you ever had. She was gasping now, her voice cracking at the edges. I waited until the silence came. Not peace, just exhaustion. Then I said, calm as I could manage. He was your son, before he was your tool. The line went dead. I stood there for a long time, phone still in hand. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't even surprised. She had never called to ask if I was okay or how much she'd taken. She only called to set fire to the bridge she'd already crossed. That evening, I sat on the porch with a blanket across my knees. The sun had dipped low, the sky turning a soft amber. Mateo joined me without a word, a bowl of sliced pears in one hand. He sat beside me, his shoulder brushing mine. "You didn't have to lie for me," I said. "I didn't," he replied. "I just let you be the kind of person who doesn't fight back until it matters." I turned to look at him, but he was already reaching into his hoodie pocket. He pulled out a small flash drive wrapped in red tape and set it gently on the armrest between us. "I thought you might want this," he said. I picked it up, feeling the weight of it in my palm. The label was simple, just a date, written in Mateo's careful hand. And with it, a new beginning was waiting. That night when the house had gone still and Mateo's door clicked shut, I opened the hall closet and reached for the top shelf. My fingers found the handle of the old fireproof box. It was heavier than I remembered. I brought it to the kitchen and set it on the table. The key was taped to the underside exactly where I'd left it 5 years ago. It clicked open with a reluctant turn. Inside were papers, some yellowing, some crisp. I thumbed through them slowly, methodically, like checking for a pulse. At the bottom lay a binder of printed statements from an old credit union account. One she never knew about. I'd opened it in my name only back when she started asking too many questions about money. The balance, $4,800. It wasn't much, not in the scheme of things, not compared to what was gone. But it was something untouched. Untouched meant clean. I whispered to no one she took what was visible. But I still have what's buried. Underneath the binder was my will, last updated in 2017. I hadn't looked at it since. I unfolded it, found her name, and crossed it out with a slow, steady hand. I wrote Mateo's in block letters, sharp and clear. He hadn't asked for anything, and maybe that's what made him worthy of being named. The next morning I left before he woke. I took the binder and the will and drove to the credit union 2 towns over, where no one knew my face anymore. The woman behind the desk didn't ask questions. I signed papers, changed the account, status transferred the name on file. It was just business. All of it. By the time I walked back to the car, the wind had picked up and the sky was gray with weather. But inside, I felt grounded. I had fewer things now, fewer accounts, fewer people, but what I had left was mine. He didn't tell me at first, but I could sense it. Mateo had been working on something of his own. I saw the change in the way he moved around the house, quieter, but not withdrawn. Focused. The kind of quiet that hums with purpose. His backpack stayed zipped a little tighter. His eyes didn't wander during meals. Something was building, and he was holding it close. Later that week, I found the printer warm. A single page left in the tray. It was Ector's mugshot, sharp, black and white, bold red text across the top, "Wanted in Texas." By the time I looked up from it, Mateo had already walked in, picked up the flyer, and slipped it into a manila envelope. He didn't explain. He didn't need to. I saw him pull out an old forwarding address Noelle had used, one she never thought to hide from him. He wrote it down slowly, carefully, and tucked the envelope inside. No return address, no message. Just a sticky note on the flyer that read, "You brought this to us. Now you carry it." He licked the envelope shut, sealed it with 2 pieces of tape, and slipped it into the mailbox for the afternoon pickup. I didn't ask him anything. Not that night. Not even when he sat across from me at the dinner table and picked at his peas with something almost like peace. But when we finished eating, I placed my hand lightly on his shoulder. "You are not your mother," I said. He looked up. No tension in his brow, no bite in his voice, just clarity. "Neither are you," he said. And with that, he stood up and carried his plate to the sink, humming something low under his breath. He slept through the night for the first time in weeks. I heard no pacing, no midnight creak of the hallway floor. And when I rose early the next morning, the mail flag was already down. The envelope was gone. The news came like everything does in small towns, sideways and casual. A friend of a friend mentioned it at the market between weighing peaches and commenting on the weather. I heard the place got searched. Your daughter's old rental. Quiet, no sirens. Just a knock at the door. I nodded once, as if they were talking about someone I barely knew. In a way, they were. Hector had been picked up for violating parole crossing state lines without notifying his officer. They'd been living under a different name, taking cash payments, claiming to run some kind of healing practice. There were rumors about the neighbors complaining strange cars at odd hours, packages left and picked up. I didn't ask for more. I didn't need to. Noelle tried to call. Twice, from 2 different numbers. I let them ring out. Then I blocked both. The next morning, I went to the phone company and changed my number altogether. I didn't owe her an open door just because she remembered it used to be unlocked. The joint accounts, what little remained, were officially closed. I signed the final forms at the credit union, initialed the line that confirmed I understood nothing left to reclaim. I left the branch with no folder in hand. There was nothing to carry. Mateo's father offered to take him for a while, said it would help him get space stability, said the boy deserved a clean stretch of calm. I agreed. Mateo didn't argue. We packed his bag together, folding his clothes in silence, each of us making peace in our own way. The house was too quiet after he left. I spent the first few days avoiding the spaces he used to fill his seat at the table, his open textbook on the couch. But slowly, I began to settle into the quiet. I woke to birds instead of alarms. I made coffee just for myself. I read entire chapters without interruption. And one morning, I realized I hadn't thought about Noelle at all the night before. Not with anger, not with ache, just not at all. A year passed, and Mateo came back to live with me. It was late afternoon when I saw her. She didn't knock. She didn't even come up to the porch. Just stood at the edge of the walkway like she wasn't sure how far she was allowed to go. No suitcase, no car running in the drive. Just Noelle, smaller than I remembered, though maybe that was just time playing tricks on me. I opened the door but stayed inside the frame. Mateo was in the living room, one knee drawn to his chest. The curtain shifted just slightly. He saw her too. "Mom?" she said, her voice too soft to match the look in her eyes. "Please." I waited for more, but there was no explanation, no apology. Just that single word, worn out and empty. I studied her for a long second. The girl I raised, the woman who vanished the shadow, who showed up now expecting something unnamed. "He's safe," I said. My voice didn't rise, didn't tremble. "And I'm fine. That's all that matters now." Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue or cry or plead. But nothing came. I didn't give her more time. I closed the door slowly, not harsh, but firmly enough that it didn't leave room for doubt. She stayed out there a moment longer. I didn't watch her go, but I heard her footsteps eventually fade down the sidewalk. Mateo didn't say anything. He just turned from the window and walked over to where I stood. I reached for the teapot on the stove and poured us each a cup without asking. He sat across from me, resting his elbows on the table. I had nothing left to explain. There were things broken between us that no visit could repair, no word could make whole. But inside my home there was order again, and silence, and enough. Life folded into a rhythm again. Just the two of us, Mateo and me. Grocery trips on Tuesdays. Library runs every other Friday. The mail sorted the porch, swept. Peace not dramatic, but steady. The kind that doesn't announce itself. One quiet afternoon, I packed 2 sandwiches, a thermos of cold tea and a pack of cards into a tote. "Let's take a drive," I said. Mateo didn't ask where. He just grabbed a book and followed me to the car. We drove out toward the foothills, where the air smelled like dust and pine. I found a flat patch beneath an old oak and spread the blanket. No special food, no fanfare. Just 2 people sitting under a tree listening to the wind push through the grass. He took slow bites of his sandwich, chewing thoughtfully, like he was waiting for the right moment. Then between sips of tea, he asked, "Do you miss her?" I didn't answer right away. I watched the light flicker through the leaves, watched the way his hands stayed still in his lap. Sometimes I said, "Finally, but I don't miss being hurt." He nodded, and we didn't need to say more. We played a few rounds of cards, letting the rules slide, laughing once when he forgot who was supposed to deal. Neither of us kept score. We just played, one draw after another, the game never really ending. And that somehow felt just right. As the sun dipped lower behind the ridge, I gathered the crumbs from the blanket and folded everything back into the tote. Mateo helped shake out the corners and tuck the cards into their worn box. The drive home was quiet but not heavy. The kind of quiet that lets you breathe. When we turned onto our street, the porch light clicked on, set on a timer I'd nearly forgotten about. It glowed just enough to remind me that home didn't have to be big or loud or full to be whole. And in that light, I found room to begin again.